After my grandfather left me everything, my parents, who abandoned me as a baby girl, sued me. When I walked into the courtroom, my mom rolled her eyes. Then the judge froze. When the courtroom doors opened, I felt my heart sink to my stomach. Not because I was afraid to see her, the woman who gave birth to me and abandoned me when I was less than a year old, but because Vanessa Kirkley knew how to remind me with a single glance, "You are worthless." She sat next to Derek, my biological father, in a suit that cost more than I earned in 3 months at the bakery. Her face was flawless, perfect makeup, hairstyle, and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. When our eyes met, she rolled her eyes demonstratively and turned away, as if I were a fly on the glass. Derek nervously flipped through his papers. 45 years old, an investment advisor, as he liked to introduce himself. The man who never called me on my birthday. The man who showed up at my grandfather's funeral wearing a $100 tie and didn't shed a single tear. Judge Morton Holloway, gray-haired with wrinkles around his eyes that betrayed his 60 years, examined the documents. His voice was monotone as he read the lawsuit. Vanessa and Derek Kirkley versus Chloe Kirkley. Inheritance law contesting the validity of a will. I clenched my hands, trying not to tremble. 21 years old, a college student, a bakery worker. I looked pathetic next to their expensive suits and confidence. But Grandpa left me everything. The house, his savings, everything he had. And now these two people who had never cared about me wanted to take it away. Suddenly, the door to the room opened. A woman entered slowly, leaning on a cane. She was 68, but she stood straight with dignity. Gray hair pulled back in a bun, a simple coat, no jewelry. Edith Kirkley, my grandmother, the woman I had only seen in photographs. Judge Holloway looked up and froze. He literally froze, where his hand raised above the paper. His face turned white, then red. He looked at Edith as if he had seen a ghost. The room fell silent, so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Vanessa turned abruptly, her face contorted with surprise. Derek stood up, grabbing the table. Edith walked to the front rows and sat down, ignoring them. Her gaze met mine, and for the first time in my life, I saw something in someone's eyes that reminded me of Grandpa Walter. Warmth and determination. The judge cleared his throat, trying to regain his composure. "Ms. Kirkley," his voice was hoarse, "I didn't expect to see you here." "Morton," Edith nodded to him, something in her tone making me shudder. "It's been many years." He looked away. "Yes, many." Vanessa and Derek's lawyer, Roland Ings, a man with a smooth face and cold eyes, stood up. "Your Honor, who is this woman? Why is she present at the hearing?" Edith turned to him. "I am Edith Kirkley, the ex-wife of Walter Kirkley, and I am here to testify that my ex-husband was of sound mind when he rewrote his will in favor of his granddaughter." A surprised murmur rippled through the courtroom. Vanessa grabbed Derek's arm, her nails digging into his wrist. Roland stood up straight, his face turning to stone. "Your Honor, that's impossible. Mrs. Edith Kirkley has had no contact with her ex-husband for the last 20 years. She cannot testify about his condition." "That's not true," Edith said calmly, pulling papers out of her bag. "We communicated regularly during the last 6 months before his death. I have records of our phone conversations and letters. Walter was completely of sound mind. I couldn't move. Grandpa never told me he was back in touch with Edith. He divorced her when I was only a few months old. The reason was a lie. Grandpa hid his debts, risked everything they had, and Edith couldn't forgive him. She left, and I thought it was forever." Judge Holloway took the papers from Edith's hands. His hands were shaking. "I'll look into it," he cleared his throat. "The hearing is adjourned for a week. We will examine the new evidence." He banged his gavel, and the courtroom came to life. People stood up and started talking. I couldn't take my eyes off Edith. She approached me, leaning on her cane. Chloe, she extended her hand. I'm your grandmother. I'm sorry I didn't come sooner. I took her hand. It was warm, dry, with thin fingers. Why weren't you at the funeral? Edith lowered her eyes. My health isn't what it used to be, and I was feeling particularly bitter at the time. But now I'm here, and I won't let them take what Walter wanted to leave you. Vanessa walked past us, and I caught a whiff of her expensive perfume. She stopped and turned around. Chloe. Her voice was sweet as poison. Do you really think that crazy old woman will save you? Vanessa, Edith said quietly but firmly, get out of here. Vanessa smiled. We have something she will never have, the truth. She left and Derek followed her without looking at me. I stood there, trying to understand what she meant. The truth. What truth? Edith squeezed my hand. Don't listen to her. She's trying to scare you. But I was already scared, because Vanessa said it with such confidence, as if she knew something I didn't, something that could change everything. The next hearing began a week later, and I already knew I was going to lose. Roland Ing stood before the judge with a folder of documents as thick as a telephone directory. 51 years old, gray temples, a suit that cost more than my grandfather's house. He spoke calmly, methodically, breaking Edith's every word into tiny pieces. Ms. Kirkley claims to have communicated with the late Walter Kirkley over the past 6 months. His voice was cold as ice, but the phone records show only 3 conversations. 3, Your Honor. Each lasted less than 5 minutes. Edith sat on the witness stand, her back straight. Her face was calm, but I could see her clenching her cane. We talked about personal matters, she said quietly. It didn't take much time. Personal matters, Roland smiled. Ms. Kirkley, you divorced your husband 20 years ago. You haven't been in contact with him all these years. And suddenly, 6 months before his death, you reappear in his life. Doesn't that seem convenient? What do you mean? Edith frowned. I mean, Roland moved closer. Your appearance here is very timely. Your granddaughter needs support in court, and here you are, ready to testify. But where were you when Walter Kirkley died? Where were you at the funeral? Silence. Edith lowered her eyes. I didn't come to the funeral, she said quietly. My heart condition flared up, arrhythmia. I was in the hospital that week. Roland raised an eyebrow. How convenient. Do you have proof? Edith took some papers out of her bag and handed them to the judge. Holloway looked them over and nodded. The medical certificate confirms her statement. But Roland didn't give up. Let's say you were sick, Mrs. Kirkley, but that doesn't explain why you haven't been in touch with Walter Kirkley for the last 20 years. And then, 6 months before his death, you reappeared. Why? Edith looked him in the eye. Because he called me. He said he wanted to talk, that he needed my advice. About what? About his granddaughter, about how to protect her future. Roland smiled. Protect her from whom? From her own parents? Edith didn't answer, but her gaze spoke for itself. Roland continued. He showed her the medical reports, 3 of them, all signed by a doctor named Simon Larch. Walter Kirkley had dementia, progressive stage, which began a year ago. He didn't recognize people, wandered the streets, forgot where he lived. I've never seen that. Never. Then the witnesses came. A neighbor, Mrs. Glenn, a woman in her 60s with a fake smile. She told how she saw Walter on the street, how he couldn't remember where his home was, how she helped him get home, and he thanked her, calling her by someone else's name. I felt so sorry for him, she said, wiping away fake tears. An old lonely man losing his mind. I clenched my fists so hard that my nails dug into my palms. Mrs. Glenn, I knew her. She lived across the street from us and always complained about the noise, about Grandpa not mowing the lawn on time. She's lying, but how can I prove it? Between sessions, when they announced a break, Vanessa and Derek approached me in the hallway. Edith went to the restroom. Laura was talking on the phone. I was alone. Chloe, Vanessa said softly, almost tenderly, we don't need to continue this. I looked at her without saying anything. We can settle this out of court, Derek added, his hands in his pockets. You're young. You need money for school, for living. We don't want to leave you with nothing. That's very generous of you, I said. Vanessa smiled. We'll take 70% of the assets, the house, part of the savings. We'll leave you 30%. That's enough to finish college, find a job. You're still young, Chloe. You have your whole life ahead of you. And you? I asked. Don't you have anything ahead of you? Derek frowned. We're his children. We have a right to the inheritance. You abandoned me, I said quietly. I wasn't even a year old. Where were you when I was 5, 10, 15? We were young, Vanessa said, and her voice turned cold. We weren't ready for a child. That's not a crime. But showing up at the funeral in expensive suits and demanding money is okay. Vanessa straightened up. We're offering you a chance to avoid losing, because you're going to lose, Chloe. We have proof. You have nothing. She left, and Derek followed her. I stood there, trembling with anger. Edith turned around and saw the look on my face. What did they say? They're offering me 30% if I give up. Edith squeezed my hand. Walter wanted you to have everything. Don't give up. But I had already given up. Because when Judge Holloway handed down his decision the next day, I knew I had lost. The evidence presented by the plaintiffs is compelling. His voice was emotionless, though he avoided looking at Edith. Medical reports and witness testimony indicate that Walter Kirkley was not capable of making adequate decisions regarding his will. The will is declared invalid. The room spun around me. Laura was saying something, but I couldn't hear her. Vanessa and Derek were smiling and shaking Roland's hand. I had lost everything. Edith and I sat in a small cafe across the street from the courthouse. She ordered coffee for both of us, even though I couldn't drink it. My throat was too tight. I'm going to appeal, I said. Laura says there's a chance. Edith shook her head. A small chance. Roland Ings doesn't lose cases. He knows what he's doing. She paused, stirring her coffee. Chloe, I want you to know, I've always felt guilty for leaving Walter, for not helping him with you. I was angry, hurt. But now I see I made a mistake. Why did you leave? I asked. Edith sighed. Walter lied to me. About money, about debts. He risked everything we had and didn't tell me. When I found out, I couldn't forgive him. I thought that if a person lies about something like that, they can lie about anything. But he didn't lie to me, I said. He loved me? Yes, Edith nodded. He loved you more than anything. And that's why he left everything to you. Not because he didn't love Vanessa and Derek, but because he knew they didn't need it. They're rich and successful. But you needed support. She leaned closer. Chloe, I suspect their documents are fake. Walter didn't have dementia. I would have known. But how can we prove it? We need a detective, someone who can check their documents, find witnesses who will tell the truth. I thought about it. I didn't have the money for a detective, but I had an acquaintance. Mark worked with me at the bakery. A tall guy with curly hair, always cheerful. His cousin was a private investigator, Gus Overman, a former insurance agent who now investigated cases for money. I called Mark that same evening. Gus? Mark laughed. He's expensive, Chloe. I don't know if you can afford him. How much? $200 a day, plus expenses. I did the math in my head. I had some savings, money my grandfather had set aside for my education. I could afford a week, maybe 2. Give me his number. Gus Overman met me 2 days later in his office, a small room above a plumbing supply store. He was 48, his face wrinkled, his eyes tired. He smoked, even though there was a no smoking sign on the door. Mark said you needed help, he said, stubbing out his cigarette. A family matter? I told him everything. About my grandfather, my parents, the court case. Gus listened and took notes. Medical records, he said. You say they were signed by a doctor named Simon Lurch. Yes. I'll check him out. If he falsified the documents, I'll find the evidence. I'll also check your parents' finances. People rarely go to court over inheritance if they're doing well financially. He named his price, $200 a day. I gave him an advance, $500, all the money I had. Give me a week. Gus said, I'll call you. But he didn't call. 2 days later, as I stood behind the counter at the bakery kneading bread dough, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. Hello? Is this Chloe Kirkley? A woman's voice, formal. Yes. Are you acquainted with Gus Overman? My heart skipped a beat. Yes. What happened? He was found this morning near his office. He's in the hospital, in intensive care, skull fracture, broken ribs. You're listed as his last contact on his phone. You need to come in. The phone fell from my hands. The hospital smelled of bleach and something else, a sweet, bitter smell reminiscent of death. I ran down the hallway past nurses who were shouting something after me, but I couldn't hear them. Intensive care, 3rd floor. Gas lay on the bed connected to a bunch of tubes and wires. His face was swollen, purple on one side. His left eye was so swollen that it wouldn't open. A white bandage wrapped around his head. Machines beeped monotonously, counting the heartbeats that were fighting for life. I stopped at the door, unable to enter. My legs wouldn't obey me. The doctor, a young man with dark circles under his eyes, came out of the room and saw me. Are you a relative? No, I hired him for a job. The doctor nodded as if that explained everything. Perhaps for him it did explain everything. Just another case, another victim. Skull fracture, 3 broken ribs, internal bleeding in the abdominal cavity, he said monotonously, as if reading a shopping list. We stopped the bleeding during surgery, but the next 24 hours are critical. If he survives, he has a chance. His brain has been damaged, but we won't know how badly until he wakes up. If he wakes up. Who did this? The doctor shrugged. The police say it may have been a robbery. He was found near the office early in the morning, around 6. His wallet was gone. His phone, too. A passerby called an ambulance. Robbery. I didn't believe it for a second. Gus was investigating my case, digging up information on my parents. And suddenly, he's found beaten half to death? This was no coincidence. The police officer standing in the hallway approached me. He was a heavy-set man in his 50s with a mustache and a tired look in his eyes. His badge read, Detective Garrison. Ms. Kirkley? Yes. Detective Garrison, I have a few questions. Please have a seat. We sat down on plastic chairs in the hallway. He took out a notebook. Why did Mr. Overman work for you? I told him about the trial, about my grandfather, about the suspicions of forged documents. Harrison took notes, his face remaining neutral, impassive. Do you think someone attacked him because of that? Don't you? I couldn't help myself. He looked at me and something flashed in his eyes. Pity, perhaps. Miss Kirkley, I understand what you're going through, but so far everything points to a common robbery. A dark street, early hours, not the best neighborhood. Mr. Overman had an expensive watch and a leather wallet with him. This happens more often than you think. But what if it wasn't a robbery? If we find evidence that it wasn't, we'll continue the investigation. For now, I advise you to be careful. If you're right and it's related to your case, you could be in danger too. He left, and I was alone. I entered the room and sat down on a chair next to Gus's bed. His breathing was heavy, wheezy, and whistling. His chest rose and fell unevenly. The machines beeped monotonously. I'm sorry, I whispered, even though I knew he couldn't hear me. This is all my fault. If I hadn't hired you, if I had just given up. But I couldn't give up. Not after everything my grandfather did for me. The next day, when I arrived at work at the bakery, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I took it out and saw a message from an unknown number. Stop digging or you'll be next. I stared at the screen. My hands were shaking so badly that the phone almost fell to the floor. I reread the message twice. 3 times. The words didn't change. Mark, who was standing by the oven, turned around and saw the look on my face. "Chloe, are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I showed him the message. His face turned pale. "Oh my God, we have to go to the police right now." "And what will they do? They'll say it's a joke, that there's no evidence it's connected to Gus." "But you can't just ignore it." Mark was right, of course. But I knew the police wouldn't help. They had no evidence. They had no reason to believe me. I saved the message, blocked the number, and tried to get on with my work. But my hands were shaking and the dough came out crooked. A week later, a summons arrived. I opened the envelope standing by the mailbox and almost dropped the papers. Vanessa and Derek Kirkley had filed a lawsuit for harassment and invasion of privacy. I had hired a private investigator to follow them, which they claimed was illegal and violated their right to privacy. They demanded $50,000 in compensation and a court order prohibiting any further investigation on my part. Laura called me that evening. Her voice was worried. "Chloe, this is bad, really bad. They can prove that you're stalking them, and that's a criminal offense." "But I wasn't stalking them. I just wanted to know the truth. They forged documents. I know it." "The court won't see it that way. They have evidence, checks for Gus's services, proof that you hired him to investigate their private lives. And now that Gus has been beaten up, they can say it's all part of your revenge, that you turned him against them. And he went too far." I sat on the floor of my small apartment above the bakery, pressing the phone to my ear. What should I do? Laura sighed, and I could hear her lighting a cigarette. She'd promised to quit, but the stress had clearly gotten the better of her. "The appeal failed last week. The judge upheld the decision in your parents' favor. A new trial on their lawsuit is scheduled for next month. If you lose it, you could go to jail, Chloe. This is serious." I turned off my phone and just sat in the dark apartment. A small room with a bed, a table, an old stove, everything I could afford on my salary from the bakery. My grandfather's house now belonged to my parents. The court had transferred the rights to them until the final decision in the case. His money, too. I had nothing left. A knock on the door made me jump. I got up, my heart pounding. Maybe it was another threat. Maybe someone had come to finish what they had started with Gus. "Who's there?" My voice trembled. "Edith." I opened the door so quickly that I almost knocked it off its hinges. My grandmother was standing on the steps, leaning on her cane with a small bag in her hand. She looked tired, old, much older than she had in the courtroom. "May I come in?" We sat at the table drinking tea. Edith looked at me intently, studying me. "Chloe, I know what happened to Gus, and I know about the threats." "Did you get the message?" I nodded and showed her my phone. She read it, her lips pressed into a thin line. "They're scared. That's good." "Good. Gus is in the hospital. I'm being threatened." "It means you're close to the truth. Otherwise, they wouldn't be worried." Edith put down her cup and took some papers out of her bag. "Chloe, I haven't been sitting around doing nothing. I hired another detective, Carl Schimmer. He's a former cop who retired 5 years ago, but he still works privately. He's been investigating this case for 2 weeks now. Since the day you lost the first trial." I stared at her. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want you to worry more than you already were. But now I have information you need to know." She spread the papers out on the table, bank statements, photographs of documents, printouts from the internet. "Your parents aren't as rich as they want to appear. 5 years ago, Derek invested all their money, and I mean all of it, in real estate. Commercial buildings in a new neighborhood that were supposed to bring in a lot of rental income. He was sure it was a gold mine. But the economy crashed. Big companies started closing their offices, and the tenants left. The building stood empty for 2 years. They lost everything, absolutely everything. I looked at the numbers. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. Loans, mortgages, tax debts. Now they live in debt. The house they show as theirs, the big one with the pool, actually belongs to the bank. They pay the minimum payments, barely staying afloat. The cars are leased. Clothes, jewelry, everything is bought on credit. They are on the verge of bankruptcy. Edith looked me in the eye. Walter's inheritance is their only chance not to lose everything for good. The house can be sold for $200,000, maybe more. Savings, another $150,000. That's enough to pay off the debts and start over. They're desperate, I whispered. Yes, and desperate people do terrible things. Do you think they ordered Gus to be beaten up? Edith nodded. Carl is looking into it. He has contacts in the police. He knows how to dig deeper than a normal investigation. But yes, I think it was them. The following weeks were a blur of anxiety and anticipation. Carl worked quietly without contacting me directly. Edith said it was safer that way. She passed the information on to me in bits and pieces. Carl found an intermediary, a man named Tito Verbs, 39 years old, a petty crook who did favors for wealthy clients, falsifying documents, organizing accidental accidents, intimidating inconvenient witnesses. Tito had known Derek since the days when he was investing in real estate. Tito helped him get around some legal nuances. Carl put pressure on Tito. He found evidence of his involvement in other crimes and threatened to turn everything over to the police. Tito broke down faster than expected. He confessed that Derek had paid him $5,000 to organize an attack on Gus. He hired 2 men through his connections, gave them Gus's office address, and told them to wait until morning. The instructions were clear. Intimidate him so he stops digging, but don't kill him. But something went wrong. One of the attackers, a former convict named Lenny Cross, enjoyed what he was doing. He beat Gus even after he stopped resisting. The second attacker tried to stop him, but was too late. Carl passed all the information on to the police. Detective Harrison apologized timidly to me over the phone. The third trial began, a criminal case. Now, Vanessa and Derek were accused of ordering an assault that resulted in grievous bodily harm. Roland Ings tried to defend himself, claiming that Tito was lying, that there was no direct evidence. But there was evidence. Records of calls between Derek and Tito. A transfer of money from Derek's account to Tito's account 3 days before the attack. Tito's own testimony. The confession of one of the attackers, the one who tried to stop Lenny, whom the police found in a neighboring state and who agreed to testify in exchange for a reduced sentence. But the trial was slow. Roland dragged out the process, filed motions, demanded that every piece of evidence be checked. And while it was going on, Gus was waking up. I was at the hospital when it happened. I was sitting by his bed in the morning before work, reading the newspaper aloud. The doctor said that voices help the brain recover. Suddenly, his fingers twitched. It was barely noticeable, but I saw it. I grabbed his hand. "Gus, can you hear me?" His eyes opened slowly, sluggishly. He stared at the ceiling, unfocused, his pupils different sizes. Where am I?" His voice was hoarse, barely audible. "In the hospital, you were beaten up. But you're safe now." He closed his eyes again, but squeezed my hand. Weakly, but he squeezed. The doctor said the recovery would be long. His memory was affected. Gus didn't remember the attack itself, didn't remember that day at all. His coordination was also affected. His left arm was almost immobile, but he would survive. That's what matters. A week later, a young man walked into the bakery. He was tall, about 24 years old, with reddish hair and serious gray eyes. He looked awkward, as if he wasn't used to his own body. His arms were too long, his shoulders too broad. He caught his shoulder on the doorframe as he entered. "Are you Chloe Kirkley?" "Yes. I'm Cole Overman, Gus's nephew." He held out his hand and I shook it. His palm was large, slightly sweaty, his grip too strong. "Gus told me about your business when I visited him yesterday. He still has trouble speaking, but I got the gist. I want to help finish what he started." I looked at him skeptically. He looked so young. No wrinkles on his face, No calluses on his hands, secondhand jeans and jacket. Are you a detective? Detective's assistant. I've been working with my uncle for 2 years. I'm learning on the job. I know I look young, but I know what I'm doing. I promise. How old are you? 24. Too young, too inexperienced. But there was something in his eyes, determination perhaps, or just a desperate desire to prove something to himself, to the world, to his uncle. I can't pay you. Don't worry about it. This is for my uncle. He's the only person who believed in me when I was 18 and didn't know what to do with my life. He gave me a job, taught me everything. I won't let his work go to waste. I thought for a moment, looking into those gray eyes. Then I nodded. Okay, what can you do? Cole pulled out an old laptop and opened it on the counter between the rolls and pastries. Gus left detailed records. He's a methodical guy, writes everything down. He checked your grandfather's medical records for dementia. They were signed by a doctor named Simon Lurch. I continued checking. Lurch lost his license 3 years ago. The official reason was falsifying medical documents for an insurance company. He helped clients get insurance payments based on false diagnoses. After that, he went underground, working for private clients, making fake certificates for money, no office, no official records, only cash, only word of mouth. My heart beat faster. Can you prove it? I found his address. He lives in a neighboring town, in an old house on the outskirts. If we talk to him and show him evidence of his connection to your father, he may confess. Why would he do that? He risks going to prison. Cole smiled, a little crookedly, with one corner of his mouth, but sincerely, because I'm very persistent, and because I have evidence that could put him behind bars for many years. He'll make a deal if we offer him the right one. Over the next few days, Cole dug even deeper. He found Lurch's bank accounts. Money was coming in regularly, in small amounts from different people. One of the amounts, $2,500, came from Derek Kirkley a month before his grandfather's death. Cole found photos of Lurch and Derek meeting at a cheap restaurant on the outskirts of town, records of phone calls between them. Cole came to the bakery every evening after his main job and told me about his progress. He was clumsy in his communication. He broke cups when I poured him coffee, tripped over chairs, blushed when I looked at him for too long. But he was smart, methodical, thorough. He didn't give up, even when it seemed like the thread had been broken. One evening, he arrived late, almost at 10 o'clock. The bakery was closed, and I was cleaning the floor, getting ready to go home. Cole burst in so abruptly that the bell above the door almost came off. "I found him," he said breathlessly, as if he had been running. "Lurch! Oh, yeah, I went there today to his house. I saw him with my own eyes, old, drunk, looking miserable. If we show him all the evidence and threaten him with criminal charges, he'll confess. I'm sure of it." I put down the mop, my heart pounding. "Are you sure?" "Yes, absolutely. We can go tomorrow morning. I've already talked to Carl. He'll back us up if we need it." "Chloe, we're almost there. Just a little more, and we'll prove the documents are fake." His phone rang sharply. He looked at the screen, and I saw his face change. It reddened, then turned pale in a second. "Carl," he whispered, picking up the phone. He listened without saying anything. His eyes widened. "What? When? How did they—" "Okay, yes, I understand." He put down the phone, looked at me, and there was real fear in his eyes. "Run now! Carl says someone has been watching your bakery for the last 2 days, a black car. He saw it this morning and this evening. They know where you are." I grabbed my jacket, phone, and keys. My hands were shaking so much I could barely zip up my jacket. "Where?" I asked Cole, who was already standing by the door, watching the street through the crack. "To my place. The apartment is on the other side of town. It's safer there. Carl is already on his way there. We left through the bakery's back door, the one that led to the alley between the buildings. The darkness was thick. The streetlight had burned out long ago, and no one had replaced the bulb. Cole held my hand and pulled me along. His car, an old Honda, rusty, with a cracked rear window, was parked around the corner. We got in. Cole started the engine and we drove off. I turned around, looking at the bakery, at my window above it. The light was on. I'd forgotten to turn it off. Are they really following me? Cole nodded, gripping the steering wheel. Carl says a black Toyota, tinted windows. It was parked across from the bakery in the morning when he drove by. Then in the evening, there again. He checked the license plate. The car is registered to a company that doesn't exist. Fake. Do they want to kill me? Cole didn't answer right away. Then quietly, I don't know, maybe just to scare me, but after what happened to Gus, I wouldn't take any chances. We drove in silence. I looked out the window at the streets flying by. My city, where I grew up, suddenly seemed foreign, hostile. Cole's apartment was small. One room, a kitchen, a shared bathroom. The furniture was old but clean. The walls were covered with paper, diagrams, photographs, notes. His workspace. Carl was already there, sitting at the table, smoking, even though the window was open. 53 years old, gray hair, a face that had seen too much. A former cop. You could see it in every movement, every glance. Chloe, he nodded at me. Sorry for the scare, but better safe than sorry. Are you sure it's them? Carl stubbed out his cigarette. As sure as I am, they ordered the attack on Gus. Your parents are running out of time. The trial isn't going their way. They're desperate. And desperate people are the most dangerous. Cole brought me tea and sat down next to me. We need to act fast. Tomorrow morning we're going to Lurch. If he confesses, everything will change. What if he doesn't? He'll confess, Cole said confidently. He has no choice. I hardly slept that night. I lay on Cole's couch, covered with his old blanket that smelled of laundry detergent and something else. Wood, perhaps. Or just him. Cole slept on the floor, even though I asked him to take the couch. Carl went home around 2 in the morning, promising to return in the morning. In the morning, we drove out of town. Lurch lived on the outskirts of a neighboring town in an old neighborhood where the houses were far apart, with large, neglected lawns. His house was small, one story, with shabby walls and a broken fence. Cole knocked on the door. No one answered. He knocked again, harder. Lurch, open up. We know you're home. Finally, the door opened. The man standing in the doorway looked older than his 62 years. A gray face, red eyes, the smell of alcohol. He was wearing old pants and a t-shirt, barefoot. What do you want? Cole showed him his detective assistant ID. Cole Overman, this is Chloe Kirkley. We need to talk about the documents you signed for Derek Kirkley. Lurch tried to close the door, but Cole had already stuck his foot in. We can talk here, or you can talk to the police. Your choice. Lurch swayed, then stepped back. We went in. The house was even worse inside. It reeked of garbage, old smoke, and alcohol. The kitchen was littered with dirty dishes, the living room with empty bottles. Lurch sat down on the sofa, grabbed a half-empty bottle of whiskey and took a swig. I don't know anything. Get out. Cole sat down opposite him and took some papers out of his backpack. Simona Larch, former therapist, license revoked 3 years ago for falsifying medical records. Since then, you've been working illegally, making fake certificates for cash. I have a list of your clients from the last 2 years, 23 people. If I turn this over to the police, you'll go to jail for many years. Lurch turned pale. You can't prove it. Cole laid out the photos on the table. Lurch and Derek in a restaurant. Lurch at the bank. A bank statement. $2,500 from Derek. I can and I will if you don't cooperate. Lurch looked at the photos, his hands shaking. What do you want? The truth, I said, and my voice was firmer than I felt. Did Derek pay you to forge my grandfather's dementia documents? Lurch was silent. Cole leaned closer. Simone, you have a chance to reduce your sentence. If you confess and help us, the prosecution may make a deal. If not, you will go to prison for all your crimes. Think about it. Lurch covered his face with his hands. His shoulders shook. He was crying. "I didn't want to," he whispered. "I needed the money. After I lost my license, no one would hire me. I started doing referrals, first for friends. Then word got around." "Did Derek pay you?" I insisted. Lurch nodded. 10,000, not 2.5, the rest in cash. He came to me and said his father had dementia, but the family doctor refused to diagnose it. He asked me to write a report as if I had examined him. He gave me all the details, name, address, everything. "My grandfather didn't have dementia," I said quietly. Larch lowered his eyes. "I know. Derek told me it was just for insurance, that they were fighting over the inheritance. I didn't think it would lead to all this." Cole recorded every word on his phone. "What about the previous will? Derek said Walter changed his will before he died, that everything was supposed to go to him and Vanessa." Lurch shook his head. "That's a lie, too. Derek showed me a copy of what he claimed was the old will, bragging that Roland had forged it well. But I saw Walter's real will. Derek accidentally left it in a folder when we met. It said that half the inheritance goes to his granddaughter. It always has. Derek just wanted to take everything. I couldn't breathe. Grandpa always thought of me. Even when he changed the will, he left me apart. And then, everything." Cole finished recording and looked at me. "That's enough. We have his confession." Larch raised his head. "What happens to me now? You'll go to the prosecutor's office and give official testimony. They'll offer you a deal, a lighter sentence in exchange for your cooperation. It's your only chance." Larch nodded. Broken. Empty. The following weeks changed so quickly that I could barely keep up. Larch gave his official testimony. The prosecutor's office opened a new case against Derek and Vanessa. Document forgery, fraud. The third trial, the one where they were accused of ordering the attack on Gus, ended in a guilty verdict. Roland tried to appeal, but the evidence was irrefutable. My appeal was reviewed. Judge Holloway called a new hearing. Edith was there, sitting in the front row, sitting up straight. When the judge ruled in my favor, declaring my grandfather's will valid, she smiled. It was the first time I'd ever seen her smile. It was beautiful. My parents lost all 3 trials, but Roland found loopholes, technical errors in the procedures, delays in the investigations. They weren't behind bars. They were still free, awaiting new hearings. The bail was huge, but they somehow found the money. They sold something, borrowed from someone. I felt relieved, but also afraid. As long as they were free, they were dangerous. Cole started coming to see me more often, not just because of the case. It was almost over. He came just because. We drank coffee and talked. He told me about his life, how his father left when he was 12, leaving his mother with 3 children, how he grew up angry and lost until his Uncle Gus took him under his wing and taught him that you can do the right thing even when the world seems unfair. I told him about my fears, that I would never be able to trust people after my parents abandoned me, that I was afraid to be alone, but even more afraid to let anyone get close. "You're not alone," Cole said quietly, touching my hand. "I'm here." One evening, he invited me to the movies. Not for work, not for an investigation, just because. A date, although he didn't call it that, blushing. The movie was bad. Some action flick where everything exploded every 5 minutes. But we laughed, ate popcorn, and I felt normal for the first time in months. After the movie, we walked home. My apartment above the bakery was 20 minutes away. Cole walked beside me, his hands in his pockets, talking about the movie, how it could have been better. The alley was dark. I didn't notice them right away. 3 men in masks stepped out of the shadows. Cole saw them first and pushed me back. "Run!" But I didn't have time. One of them grabbed my arm and pulled me back. I screamed. Cole lunged at him and punched him in the face. The attacker staggered and let go of me. The other 2 jumped on Cole. He fought back. I saw his fist hit one of them in the stomach, and he doubled over. But there were more of them. They beat him, Again and again, I screamed, tried to help, but one of them pushed me, and I fell onto the asphalt. Pain shot through my knee and arm. Cole fell. One of the attackers picked up something, an iron pipe. I saw it glint in the light of the street lamp. He swung. "No!" I screamed. The blow. Cole didn't move. A siren. A patrol car appeared on the street, not far away, its flashing lights already visible. The attackers ran, disappearing into the darkness. I crawled to Cole. His head was at a strange angle. Blood was dripping onto the asphalt. Cole, please!" The police. The ambulance. Everything was a blur. They checked me out, bandaged my knee and arm. Bruises, scratches, nothing serious. But Cole... They carried him away on a stretcher, hooked him up to machines. The doctor said something about a head injury, about a critical condition. At the hospital, they told me he was in a coma, just like Gus, but worse. Brain swelling. The next few days would be crucial. I sat by his bed, holding his hand. It was cold. The machines beeped. The doctor said his chances were 50-50. Gus came to see me at the hospital the next morning. I hadn't slept all night, sitting by Cole's bed, watching his chest rise and fall slowly. The machines beeped monotonously, counting down the seconds of life that hung by a thread. Gus looked better than he had a week ago when he was discharged. His face had regained some color, and he was walking almost without a cane, although his left arm still moved slowly and awkwardly. He looked at his nephew, and his face turned to stone. "Who did this?" "I don't know." "3 men in masks." Gus turned to me, and his eyes flashed with fire. "It was your parents. I know it, and I'll prove it, even if it's the last thing I do." The detective kept his word. Over the next few days, Gus worked like a man possessed. Carl helped him. They worked together, methodically going over every detail of the attack. The police found one of the masks thrown in a trash can not far from the scene of the attack. It had traces of DNA on it, but the real breakthrough came a week later. Gus received a call from an unknown number. A man with a distorted, muffled voice gave him an address. It was one of the apartments in the old neighborhood. One of the attackers was hiding there. It turned out later that it was Tado Verbs. He realized that he was going down with Derek and Vanessa and decided to save himself. He would turn everyone in to reduce his sentence. Gus and Carl went there with the police. The attacker, a man in his 30s with tattoos on his arms and neck, tried to escape through the window. But Gus caught up with him on the stairs and pinned him against the wall. "Who hired ye?" The man spat and tried to wriggle free, but when Gus showed him a photo of Cole in the hospital, hooked up to machines, something changed in his eyes. "I didn't mean to hit him that hard," he muttered. "I just wanted to scare the girl. But this guy, he wouldn't back down. I had to. Who hired you?" The man remained silent. Then, when Detective Harrison promised him a deal with the investigation, he broke down. "Tito Verbs. He said some rich people wanted to scare the girl. They paid $3,000 up front, $3,000 after. We were just supposed to scare her, show her she was in danger. If she didn't back down, then, then more. More means kill." The attacker lowered his eyes. Tito didn't say it directly, but we understood. The second attacker was hiding in a neighboring state. Gus and Carl went there together. The man lived in a motel on the highway, paid cash, didn't go out. When they entered the room, he resisted. He pulled out a gun, an old, rusty revolver. Carl jumped to the side. Gus jumped forward. A shot rang out, but it only hit his arm, which didn't prevent him from overpowering the attacker. The bullet went right through Gus's palm, between the bones. He was lucky. If it had been a centimeter to the left, it would have broken the bone. They took him to the hospital, stitched him up, and bandaged him. He came out 3 hours later, his arm in a sling, his face pale but determined. "We got him," he told me on the phone. "Both of them. They confessed." It was Tito who hired them, and Tito worked for your parents. The trial expanded. Now Vanessa and Derek were charged not only with ordering the attack, but with ordering the murder. Even if it failed, the very fact of ordering it meant life imprisonment. Roland Ings tried to wriggle out of it. He claimed that Tito acted alone, that Vanessa and Derek knew nothing. But the evidence was compelling. Call records. Money transferred from their account to Tito's account 2 days before the attack on me. The testimony of both attackers, the testimony of Tito himself, who was now cooperating with the investigation. Vanessa and Derek were panicking. I saw it in the courtroom. They sat pale, with dark circles under their eyes. Without makeup, Vanessa looked 10 years older. Derek was thin, nervous, even smoking in the courtroom until the bailiff forced him to put it out. One evening, I got a phone call, an unknown number. I didn't want to answer, but something compelled me to. "Hello, Chloe?" Derek's voice, tired, broken. "We need to talk. I have nothing to talk to you about. Please, we want to meet, just talk. No lawyers, no court, just us." I was silent. "At a restaurant downtown. Tomorrow at 7 in the evening. Lots of people, safe. Come, Chloe. One last time." He hung up. I called Edith. She said, "Don't go alone. Take Gus or Carl." They're desperate, and desperate people are unpredictable. Gus agreed to go with me. Carl stayed behind to work on the court documents, preparing new evidence. The restaurant was crowded, the tables were close together, and the waiters were rushing between them. Vanessa and Derek were sitting by the window in the corner. I saw them right away. They looked out of place in this crowded place, like ghosts from their past life. Gus sat down at the next table, not taking his eyes off them. I walked over and sat down across from him. Vanessa looked at me, and there was something new in her eyes. Fear, perhaps, or just fatigue. "Chloe," Derek began, twisting a napkin nervously. "Thank you for coming." I remained silent. "Now we want to offer you a deal," Vanessa said quietly. "We'll withdraw all the lawsuits and give you the inheritance without going to court. Everything Walter left behind is yours. We won't contest it." "In exchange for what?" Derek leaned closer. "In exchange for you dropping the charges. The assault on you, on that guy, say it was a mistake, that you're not sure who did it." Yeah, I looked at them, not believing them. "Are you serious?" "Chloe, please," Vanessa reached out, but I pulled my hand away. "We made mistakes, lots of mistakes, but we're your parents, and you don't want us to go to jail, do you?" I laughed, shortly, bitterly. "The inheritance is mine anyway. The court has already ruled on that. And you tried to kill me. You almost killed Cole. This isn't about money anymore." Vanessa suddenly exploded. Her face flushed, her eyes flashed. "You think you're better than us? You know nothing about life, about how hard it is to build a career, maintain status, live when everything is falling apart around you. Your grandfather wasn't as saintly as you paint him. He made mistakes, lied, took risks." "Maybe," I said quietly, "but he never tried to kill people." Derek added nervously, "We can work something out. Think about it, Chloe. You don't want us to go to jail, do you? We are your parents, after all. Your blood." I stood up. My legs were shaking, but my voice was firm. "You were never my parents. My father was Grandpa Walter. He raised me, loved me, cared for me. You are just people who gave birth to me and abandoned me, and now you are trying to take away the last thing I have." I left without looking back. Gus got up and followed me. On the way out, Derek shouted something. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was threatening. Gus grabbed my arm. "Not through the front door. Something's wrong there." He led me to the kitchen and asked a waiter to show us the back door. We went out into the alley behind the restaurant, and that's when I saw it. A black SUV with tinted windows slowly driving down the street in front of the restaurant, as if looking for someone. Gus pulled me in the opposite direction. "Run! Now!" We ran through the alleys between the buildings. My lungs were burning. Gus held my hand and pulled me along, even though he could barely breathe himself. His ribs hadn't fully healed after the first attack. We reached my car, which was parked 2 blocks away. Gus got behind the wheel, despite his injured arm, and started the engine. The SUV appeared on the next street and turned toward us. Gus swerved sharply, almost ramming a parked car. We sped through the streets, the SUV following us. Twice it appeared alongside us, but Gus maneuvered, turning sharply, and we lost sight of it. Finally, after 15 minutes of chasing, we lost them for good. We stopped near the police station. Gus was shaking as he gripped the steering wheel. "They wanted to finish us off," he whispered, "if we had gone out the front entrance." I couldn't answer. I just sat there trying to breathe. The following weeks were a whirlwind. The trials ended with Vanessa and Derek found guilty on all counts, ordering the attack on Gus, ordering the murder of me and Cole, forgery, fraud. They were facing 20 years to life, but on the eve of the sentencing, they disappeared. Detective Harrison called me in the morning. "They've escaped. They've left the country. They forged passports and bought tickets under false names. Someone helped them, either Roland or one of Tito's connections. Will you find them? We'll try, but if they're already in South America or Asia, the chances are slim. The police have issued an international arrest warrant for them. They've lost everything. Their house has been confiscated to pay off their debts. Their accounts have been frozen. Their reputation is ruined. All their friends and partners have turned their backs on them. And Walter's inheritance, the house, the savings, everything, went to me, permanently, without objection." Cole woke up a week after they fled. I sat next to him, held his hand, read aloud from a book, something about a detective, ironically. Suddenly his fingers squeezed my palm. I stood up so abruptly that the chair tipped over. "Cole." His eyes opened, slowly, but they opened. He looked at me and smiled weakly. "Hello?" His voice was hoarse. "Did I miss anything interesting?" I laughed and cried at the same time. I leaned over and hugged him, carefully so as not to touch the tubes. "A lot. I'll tell you later." The doctors said he was on the mend. Slowly but surely. His memory is intact, as is his coordination. He'll be able to check out in a month. 6 months pass. I'm standing on the porch of my new house. It's small and cozy, in a quiet neighborhood with big trees and friendly neighbors. I sold my grandfather's house. I couldn't live there. Too many memories, and most of them are now mixed with bitterness because of what happened. With the money from the sale, I bought this house and opened my own bakery. I named it Walter's in honor of my grandfather. It's small with 5 tables, but it's mine. Edith helps me. She comes every morning, and together we knead dough and bake bread, rolls, and pastries. We talk a lot about my grandfather, about the past, about how she regrets not forgiving him sooner. Judge Holloway comes to the bakery once a week. He always orders coffee and a croissant and sits at a table by the window. Sometimes Edith sits with him, and they talk for hours. Cole returned to work as a detective 2 months ago. Now he is more cautious. He doesn't get into dangerous situations without backup. He always has a backup plan, but he is still smart, persistent, and doesn't give up. We are dating. Officially, seriously. It's not a fairy tale romance like in the movies. We argue because he forgets to call when he's running late. I annoy him by leaving cups of half-drunk tea everywhere. But we laugh together, support each other, and I feel happy, really happy. Gus has made a full recovery. His arm moves normally, his ribs have healed. He comes to see me once a week, drinks coffee, eats buns. He jokes that I have to feed him for free for the rest of his life because he almost died for my cause. I laugh and feed him. I sit on the porch with a glass of cold tea. It's summer, evening, the sun is setting behind the trees. Cole sits next to me, reading the newspaper, his feet up on the railing. I think about my parents. Where are they now? In some country in South America, perhaps, living under false names, hiding, afraid of every knock on the door. Do they regret what they did? I don't know. Maybe I'll never know, but I feel at peace. I saved what my grandfather wanted for me. I found my real family. Edith, Gus, Cole. People who really matter. Who don't abandon you when the going gets tough. Cole, I say quietly. He doesn't look up from the newspaper. Do you think they'll ever come back? Now he looks at me. His gray eyes are serious. Hardly. If they come back, they'll be arrested immediately. They know that. What if they do? He reaches out and takes my hand. Then we'll be ready together. I smile. Yes, together. The sun sets below the horizon, painting the sky orange and pink. Somewhere in the city, people are living their lives, arguing, making up, dreaming, crying. And here I am, on the porch of my house, with the person I trust, and for the first time in many years, I feel that everything will be okay. Not perfect, not like in a fairy tale, but okay, really okay, and that's enough.